I am so excited about today's episode, guys. I'm going to introduce you to two of my good friends, Julie and Junell Hernando. They dropped everything in their lives here in the States to open a shelter for recovering victims of sexual abuse in the Philippines. Now, I know what you're thinking. The show is usually lighthearted and funny, and we're going to bring up these themes of keeping a positive attitude and a sense of humor when dealing with sensitive topics. My voice does sound a little off today, and it's not because I started chain smoking or moved to Los Angeles to breathe the beautiful open air there. But my guests today were just too important to postpone or cancel, so I'm going to chat with them anyway, and you're just going to have to pretend like this is my normal voice. Now, as a matter of topic and style, I'm going to keep things entirely unscripted and open today as I talk with Julie and Junell about what they do in their miraculous story. I met them because when I went to the gym in college, there was an older Latino gentleman who would sit wearing nothing but a towel in the sauna with me, and we would just look at each other day after day because we would go in at the same time. And finally, we decided to start talking. And when I mentioned my Philippines connections with my wife and having lived there before, he said, "Oh, you need to meet my friends Julie and Junell Hernando. They dropped everything in their lives here in the States and opened Lighthouse Sanctuary in the Philippines." And so I got a hold of Julie online because of our Latino friend in the sauna. And when I made one of my trips to the Philippines, we met at a McDonald's in downtown Manila, and she told me all about their mission and how Lighthouse Sanctuary works and what she and Janelle have been doing to help recovering victims. And it inspired me. And I helped them with one of their fundraisers. And I just thought of having them on the show because I know they're such a positive force of light and good in the world. And so I want everyone's full attention as I speak with them today. They're amazing, inspiring guests. And I welcome them to the studio now, Julie and Junell Hernando. Julie and Junell, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. It's great to see you guys. How are you both doing?
We're great. Thank you, Anthony, for allowing us to be here. We're really grateful to be a part of your show.
Yeah, I'm just really excited. I mean, I know you have been a supporter of Lighthouse from the very beginning, and if you've seen how we started, it's just so exciting and it's mind-blowing to see the things that has happened. And I'm just happy to have somebody like you who've seen it from the beginning and where we are now. And it's just exciting where we're going to go.
Yeah. And Lighthouse Sanctuary is the name of the facility that you run. It may be time to pluralize that because I hear you have a second operation opening. Is that true?
That's true. By the end of the year, we will be functional in Tarlac.
That's awesome. I may be getting a little ahead of myself. Like I was saying, we met almost by happenstance, and I'm hoping we can get to the bottom of this. So when I was going to college, there was an older gentleman who would sit in the sauna with me, and for several days we would just kind of awkwardly look at each other and not talk. Eventually we decided to start chatting, and I brought up my Philippines connections, and then he mentioned you guys, and he said, "Oh, if you love the Philippines, then you ought to meet my friends Julie and Junell. They're wonderful. They've opened this recovery center for victims of human trafficking, and they're just amazing people." And then I met you guys, and I came and I helped with one of the fundraisers. And then he disappeared. I don't know if he's like an angel or something. Do you remember who this was? His name's not coming to mind.
We're not sure. The only person I can think of, who's the one who used to work in the temple?
Hispanic. I keep thinking Hispanic.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe we can just go with he was an angel. I think I like that explanation better. I'm sure
whoever it was, he's definitely been an angel and
yeah,
helping
absolutely.
You connect people, and this work is all about connection, and it's amazing for me to meet people who are just the Lord has prepared to be part of the work that we're doing, and that's just the fun part of being able to do this, is to get to see those miracles.
Back us up here, Julie and then Junell. Before Lighthouse, before you got started on this amazing journey and the story that we're going to get to, how did you two meet? And then what kind of set up you giving your lives to such an important project?
So we met through friends. Junell had come back to Utah, was living with his family. He made a group of friends who were all Filipino. And he invited them to go country swing dancing.
Trolley Square
Nice.
in Salt Lake.
And my friends who were also mutual friends, Filipinos from BYU Hawaii, had been invited by him, and they knew that I country danced, so they took me. And of course, you can imagine, it's not typical to see an Asian in hip hop clothes who's a country swing dancer. So he definitely stood out, and the rest is history from there.
That's awesome. I love a good meetup romance story. Who knew that even at that stage that you'd be preparing each other and being prepared by God for such an important work. Now, I want to make sure I get this right, because I do remember you, Julie, explaining how you kind of came to the place where you knew you needed to move your family from the States to the Philippines to begin helping victims of human trafficking. And I remember it almost being sort of this miraculous, tear-jerking story. So what was the jumping off point of, we have a regular life, a house, young kids in school, to let's pack everybody up and move? How did that happen?
There were so many miracles and pieces to that. Actually, my kids were not in school. One of the first answers that I got from the Lord was to homeschool my kids, which I was a former school teacher. So part of me felt like, well, I have the skills, and the other part of me felt like, why? But yes, we had gone through some trials ourselves that really solidified our conversion to the atonement of Jesus Christ. And it was a conversion that we wanted to share with other people. And we went to a documentary movie together where we watched about children who'd been rescued from human trafficking. And we were so united on that cause of there has to be something we can do. Now, understand that when we were thinking these things, the something we could do in our mind was like, write grant letters for another organization, or,
How can we make more money so we could contribute to this cause?
Right.
Yeah. We did feel our hands were full, that we were established and set where we were living. We were quite happy. But when we prayed, the answer came. Originally, I received the answer to prayer, and it was a very clear answer that we needed to come here as a family to the Philippines and open a safe house, that there were children who weren't safe and needed the gospel, specifically the atonement of Jesus Christ, to heal from what they had been through. And I didn't have all the pieces at that time of what that looked like or would be like. I just understood, pack up and go.
Right.
And so you can imagine Junell was definitely on board, but had a lot of fears and concerns with what that looked
There were
like.
days I was on board. There were days I was like, what are we thinking? We are crazy. Like, who does that? We have no idea what we're doing.
Absolutely. I think anybody can relate with those feelings. Now, at what point, Junell, did you feel like you had become converted to the idea that, you know what, this is the right thing for us? Let's take our family and move and dedicate our lives to this. Was there a moment that there was like a light switch that turned on for you?
Yes, there's definitely. Julie was talking about that. We first saw the movie, and yeah, we were moved by that organization who does great work, and we felt like we have kids, if nobody is doing this work, who would? And I remember watching that documentary, and they talk about what are the formulas of these things happening. They said in countries where they speak English, there's poverty and there's internet access. Those are the places. And I was like, that's exactly Philippines. I'm from Philippines, and I'm sure it's happening in the Philippines. And so when Julie got an answer saying, yeah, we feel like we have to move in the Philippines, that day was easy because I was having a bad day at work, and Julie was ready to move to Philippines and get it started, and she hasn't been to Philippines. And
Right.
I was like, Julie, you have no idea what life is like in the Philippines. And so about few weeks, we had Julie's brother convince us, because he also had his answer, that he wants to support this and make this happen. And so he said, you know what, Junell, Julie, why don't you have 2 weeks in the Philippines? I'll pay for everything. And at that time, I haven't been to Philippines for 10 years, and I was just like ready. So for me, yes, the idea of opening shelter is great, but you know what? I'm sure if we go to Philippines, Julie will forget about this whole idea of doing this work. And so I was really said, yes, let's do it for the free trip. I want to go to the Philippines and take Julie there. And so Julie, can I tell the story of going to, so before we came for that 2 week trip, and that was Julie's first time to come to the Philippines, Julie wrote a letter to the mayor of where we felt like the Lord is calling us to start the shelter. So Julie wrote a letter, and we found out that the mayor has canceled all her appointments to meet with us. I was like, whoa, that is crazy. Like, we'd never met, we'd never talked to mayors or anyone at that politics about. We were like, sweet, let's see. And so I was like, Julie, I'm gonna support you. This is your thing, and you go talk to it. Let's meet with the mayor. So during that time, our youngest son is only 6 months old, and he was still breastfeeding. So we decided to go to Philippines with him with us. So we got there and met at the mayor's office, and while we were waiting, our son started crying. And Julie had to step out and feed Landon during that meeting. And I was like, crap, I can't do this. This is Julie. Julie, you're supposed to. And all of a sudden, Julie stepped out and they said, okay, the mayor is ready for you.
Oh,
and I was
boy.
like, I'm in trouble. So anyway, we went in, right, trying to explain what Julie's vision is. And then after that, Julie ended up coming back in, and the next thing I know, it was a surreal feeling that the spirit was so strong during that meeting, and there were people that were in tears, and then the mayor started saying, "Can I tell you my side of the story?" And so she told us that the day before I got Julie's letter on my desk, I met with the health workers in the city, and she was shocked on the cases of kids who being abused. And so she said that night I went on my knees and asked the Lord, what can I do? I don't want this to happen in my city. And she said the next day she saw Julie's letter on her desk. And when she was telling that story, she said, wow, I know the Lord loves me. And so she said, this is an answer to a prayer. And of course, for us, we're like, whoa, that is crazy.
We recognize that miracles often happen that way on both sides. And it was the miracle we needed to know exactly where the shelter should be. It was her miracle to know that God answers her prayers and he cares about his children. And it was the miracle for the children who had been praying to get to a safe place.
And it's a miracle for me, who I have lots of doubt and questioning, like, should we do this? So when we walked out to that meeting, I was like, okay, Julie, I can't deny it. That was an answer. And so we got to do what we need to do to make this happen. And so we went back after that 2 weeks. It took us about 6 months to 7-8 months to really prepare and grasp this idea. It wasn't easy. There's still a lots of roller coaster during that process, but we ended up selling half of our stuff in Utah and saving some of the stuff just in case it still doesn't work. So there's still doubt there.
I was just going to say, I meant to ask you, first of all, I hope you never lose the sense that that what you decided to do as a couple is miraculous. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of moxie. And there's a lot of people that feel like they want to help in some way, but just aren't brave enough to take that first step. So I hope you never lose sight of how amazing your story is. And that's the first thing I want to impress on people's minds, just hearing you recount this again. Secondly, yes, so you have this enthusiasm, you have some miracles happen, but then it sounded like the logistics sort of came out of nowhere and shellacked you guys. You didn't know what kind of permits you needed, what kind of licenses you needed, and what kind of government social workers needed to help you. And so how did you go from vision and miracles to logistically making it happen? And I know you were about to get into that with getting started on building the project or building the boat and just kind of going by the Spirit as you went. So how do the logistics go from construction to licensing to all of that?
The short answer, I mean, there's a lot of miracles that has happened from that time that I was sharing to you from where we are right now. But one of this, to summarize quickly, one of the most common thing that I feel like the process is just saying yes. I felt like the Lord will never show you the whole vision. And in my previous work, I was a project manager. And it's important for me to see from A to B how to get that and what are the pieces that needs to happen. But with this one, it's impossible. There is no way for me to see how to make it happen. But the Lord has shown us one step in front of us, what we need to do and what needs to happen is just taking that step over and over again and trusting, okay, let's do that. And then what's next? Let's do that. What's next? And I think that process I have to learn in trusting the Lord in doing that over and over again.
And I would say figuring out each of those little pieces always came through those angels, like whoever it was who came to you. There were angels all along the way who said, oh, I know the answer of how to get that done. Or I know who you can talk to get that done. And every time that we just accepted that door being opened, there were answers of how to.
And I'm not going to lie, Anthony, there are many days I feel like I want to give up. This is
I'm
too
sure.
hard. It's exhausting. And during those moments and during those hard moments, those are the moments that a big miracle happen. And those are the times where I feel like, oh my gosh, the Lord really cares about this work. He wants to make this happen. And so I guess for me, my message is that when people are at that brink of giving up, those moments are so important and so crucial. Hold on, because those are the times where the Lord is about ready to show you and that this is beyond you. This is more than you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. And I think a lot of my listeners would be interested with the scope of what you do at this point. So tell us practically, Julie, the scope of your operation. How many victims are you helping at a time now versus at the beginning? How many people do you have on staff? What sort of things do you do to help people after they've been extracted or removed from these dangerous situations?
Definitely. I want to make it clear that we do not do any of the rescue operations. So our side is the safety and healing side. So once a child is rescued or comes forward and asks for help, they're brought or referred into the shelter, and we sit with that child and with whoever is safe with them. So it could be their local social worker, the police officer, or could be a parent. And they come in and we have a meeting with our social worker and a few from the shelter. We sit with them and we explain to them their opportunity. If they choose to come into the shelter, they are welcome to come. We explain to them that it's not a jail, because we understand fight and flight that comes with trauma. Oftentimes children question if they're being forced to do things and they resist. So we bring them in, we show them that this is an opportunity for them to be safe, an opportunity for them to heal. If they accept that opportunity, then they come in. The shelter is set up for a total of 20 girls. They're all female, although I think it's important for most listeners to understand that there are actually more boys being abused in the Philippines than girls. And so if they feel the call and are ready to come help the boys, there's a great need here for that as well. So our shelter is only girls, and we have a total of 20 beds available for them, and we run it like a home. It really is a home. So the services of healing, of course, start with the daily needs, making sure that they have healthy food, enough sleep, a chance to exercise, a safe person to express themselves to, and we do holistic healing. So we make sure that there, of course, are spiritual opportunities to grow their relationship with the Lord. There are opportunities to take care of their education. So they homeschool there through modular learning. And we do group sessions. So each day of the week, there are sessions where they meet as groups and they learn pieces of their healing. So they learn to accept that the abuse is not their fault, no matter what they were wearing or what they were doing at the time. They learn to understand their own feelings versus what other people think of them. They learn emotional resilience. What is anxiety? What is depression? What is trauma? They learn also what is addiction, how to recognize it, why people turn to addictions, and how to get through it. So all of these pieces that they're learning in their group sessions help them to become stronger and prepared for their reintegration. On the other side, they do individual sessions as well, therapy sessions. And in those counseling sessions, they prepare for their court hearing. So they learn how to tell the details of their story, which is incredibly difficult.
I could imagine that has to be done the right way, or it's just re-traumatizing.
Absolutely. And especially in a court setting. So the way the court is set up, the child has to testify in front of their perpetrator, in front of generally a male judge and male prosecutors. And of course, it feels as though they're not being believed because they have to be cross-examined. And most of the courts here still cross-examine them as an adult style setting.
That is slowly changing. I mean, in the US, they don't allow that to happen anymore, especially if the victim is a minor. But here, there's still a work.
That actually was, and I don't mean to jump too far ahead, but that was a question a few of my listeners wanted me to ask you was, what are some similarities and differences between the United States and the Philippines in this process, especially legally? So it's interesting to know that while it's changing, that the way that court proceedings are held is different in the U.S. and the Philippines. Is there anything else just that comes to mind that would be a compare and contrast?
Yes, there's no jury in the Philippines for any of their trials. And there's no real waiting rooms in most places. Now we're in the outskirts, we're not in the main city. So I would imagine things are different in Manila. But we're pretty out far from all of the city. And so where we are, generally they have the perpetrator and the victim sit next to each other waiting for their time. Everyone is called at the same time, like 8 a.m. And you wait until you're called in. So you don't know whether you'll go in at 8 a.m. or at 1 p.m.
Or it'll be canceled. So it's just efficient. And so there's still a long ways to go. I mean, the first case that we have worked with is still ongoing right now, ever since we got started.
Which is 4 years.
Yeah, it's been 4 years and it's still a process. And they just, it's just the process is just takes a lot longer. And And
There's still a lot of doubt in the system. It is inefficient in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of doubt. But I do have to say, from the time that we came until now, we've been able to see huge shifts that are making all the difference. For example, statutory rape law was passed, meaning we went from 12 years old of age of consent to 16. That just happened last year.
Okay, wow.
So before last year, when we would take a child into court who was
over 12,
13 years old, they had to prove there was no consent with whoever these adult men were.
My goodness.
That's a really difficult thing for a child whose brain is still developing to fully understand.
and
Right.
who has been manipulated since they were 7, and we have to understand. I mean, I know you introduced us dealing with trafficked kids, but the reality, I want to clarify that most cases that we work with are sexual abuse within their homes, and neighbor or relatives, stepfather or biological fathers. So most cases that we deal with are along those lines. And we have worked with about 90 kids since we started. And the reality, not all of those kids that I said are pretty story. None is pretty story, but I felt like a success story. And like what Julie said, the shelter is not a prison. So when they're not ready, we have to learn to let them go and let them know that when they're ready, we are here for them.
I do want to explain why our main focus is not the trafficked children at this specific shelter. And it may be in our next. We're still feeling out what the Lord has prepared down there, specifically online sexual exploitation of children here is nearly #1 in the world, and not something Philippines is proud about, of course. But it's like Junell was explaining with the English and all of the technology, it's an easy exploitation. But most of our children have been abused since they were very young, many with multiple abuses. And we found that when our focus was on the trafficked children, there were too many even of the police officers who were afraid to deal with the rings. It became very difficult to rescue or rehabilitate the children because they go back into a society who says abuse is normal. This is happening everywhere. So what we're trying to do is create leaders by those who accept that abuse is not normal, it's not okay, and they're ready to educate their families and their communities when they go back home.
Well, it sounds like the need is such a wide net that there's all sorts of good you can do with various types of people that need help. And so it sounds like there's a lot more work to be done than there are people that can help. And that's honestly one reason why I wanted to chat with you guys, because I feel like there are a lot of people who, if they really realize the depth of the issue, both domestically and worldwide, they would be doing more. But people aren't really thinking about this, I think, often. Or when they do, they just kind of push it down because it's kind of an ugly idea, and people would rather kind of live in this bubble of just sort of saying, well, the world's a great place, and yeah, there's these things that happen, but there's really nothing I can do about it. And so they kind of, can lull themselves asleep with that. In fact, this is usually a comedy show. I like to tell a lot of jokes. I like to have a good time. However, I think I'm actually able to relax and have a time and have a better sense of humor in life when I feel like I am involved in things that matter and things that sometimes are dark but are important and need to be done. And so, Junell, would you be able to speak to that idea of maybe it actually being easier for you to have genuine happiness even though you're involved with something that can be very heavy?
I'm telling you, Anthony, that is the only way to do this work. You have to have humor. You have to find joy, because if you don't, it will consume you. It will. I mean, there are times where we get too serious, but we learn that we have to find a way to dig deeper, to find way to laugh. And so it is important for us to learn how to find humor in everything that we're doing, like with our staff, even with the kids at the shelter. Sometimes we what we do is we got those snowballs from Utah, where it's like squishy. We would just put that out, and we will just start chucking at each other. And that's one time at the shelter where everyone, no matter where you are, what you're doing, it's a snowball fight at the shelter.
But yeah, I want your thoughts as well, Julie. But basically, yeah. How do you deal with it? How do you find a way to have a sense of humor and be more optimistic, even though you're dealing with this on your day to day?
I appreciate people like you, Anthony, because I don't necessarily have the sense of humor, but I love to laugh. So when someone else can provide it, it really lightens our load. And we do try to surround ourselves with people like you who can accept the things that are important in life and talk about them, but yet have a good time and talk about the things that are just fun, that connect us in a good, fun way. The staff that we've hired, they love to laugh, and children are just naturally more that way. Even the ones who've gone through really difficult times, they will search for the things to laugh about. And so sometimes we go there to lighten up our moods, to just be lighter.
This is a question for both of you, but to some of my listeners, and then more broadly to other people that you interact with, what would you say to someone who has woken up to the prevalence of this issue, but is hesitant about getting involved because they don't want to be a downer on themselves, or they're not sure if they can handle another, what can be a stress-inducing topic? How would you help involve someone and say, hey, look, you can help be part of the good, and you don't have to sacrifice being in a good mood to actually participate? What would your message be to people that are kind of on the fence?
My first thought is light and darkness, right? When I first started getting into this, it was this equal idea. As much darkness as I felt that was motivating me to do this, I would see that many miracles and experience that much light and that much greatness. And that was really powerful for me in helping me to trust the Lord, that he would take care of all those heavy and dark feelings. But I have to say, I was reminded again yesterday, and I think it's important to put it out there because so many people believe that the more effort you put into being spiritual, the more resistance there is from the other side and the harder life gets. I do want people to understand that is not true. That the further we get into the light and the more we truly have an eye single to God's glory, the less effect any of the heaviness has on us. It exists, it is there, and we deal with it. But the reality is life is so much more full of hope and peace and joy and the fruits of the Spirit when our eye is single to his glory.
Basically, it sounds like when you can be involved in something that may be serious but is more fulfilling than it is, I guess back to Junell's, make an analogy out of the snowballs, it's a snowball effect of being more fulfilled and positive and happy in your life, even though the calculus looks like, well, you're dealing with all these intense things, but how could you have so much joy? Well, it's because you're able to help make the world a better place, I think is what I'm getting from that. Well, kind of as a final thought, and again, this is for both of you, it sounds like with the day-to-day of hiring people that work there, housing, feeding, and providing these programs, including schooling and recovery, and then even logistics of travel, there's a lot that goes into operating Lighthouse Sanctuary, especially with a second location opening. So you've talked with me before about how you do fundraising and how people can reach out, but Junell, if you could start with maybe where people can find you guys, the best way to keep up on what you're doing, and then explain a little bit about the upcoming event you have in Utah.
Yes. I just want to go back a little bit and just say, I remember before we get started, um, Tim Ballard was asked, who is the founder of Operation Underground Railroad, and he said a lot of people come and say, "What can I do?" because they feel moved, and he told them, like, I don't know what you can do. You tell me what you can do, or ask the Lord. And that's exactly what we did. We pray about what we can do, and I felt like that's very important. I know that not everyone can just leave everything like what we did, and I don't feel like that's what the Lord wants. I mean, if everybody just leave everything, then I don't think that's gonna work. And do exactly what we did. I do feel like it is very important for each individual to understand what is their part, what is their calling, what is the Lord is asking them to do to be part of this. Like with you, Anthony, I felt like you need to talk to Junell and Julie and do it in this platform. We appreciate that because you're doing your part, and there's going to be a lot of people who will receive inspiration maybe as they're listening to this, and they will feel like, oh, I can do this. And if you do that, do it, follow it. We're going to have an event in Utah on May 6th. And we would love, if you want to learn more about what we're doing and to understand and be part of the work that we're doing, we would love for you to be there. We have an Eventbrite registration link. We'll be there on May 6th. And what time would that be?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. That'll be May 6th, 6 p.m. And that would be in Orem, Utah.
What I'll do for our listeners is I will include the details for the event in the description of the video, wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. I'll also put a link to the page in the description for the fundraiser on May 6th in Utah for anybody that could attend. So we can keep talking about it for just a moment, but I want everyone to know that you can go down into the description and find those details.
Yeah, we're excited to share the things that has been happening in the vision. The second shelter, LDS Charities, has been a big part of making that happen. And of course, there are private donors that they chose not to be recognized that is making that happen. And we're so grateful for those people. The vision is really...
We have a visitor. That's okay. How's it going, bud? Say hi. You're famous now. I love it. Who is that?
That's our youngest.
Oh, okay.
Who was canceled in the story, is now 7 years old.
Oh, that's incredible. That's the baby?
That's
Yes.
the baby.
That's the baby from the story. That is awesome. That just shows how long you guys have been doing this. As kind of a final thought, what would be your send-off message for people who've listened today and want to come away with something? What can I do? How can I change to help contribute in any way?
I would say my send-off message is that every single one of us has a call. And when we find that call, the world becomes a better place. And so I challenge each person to recognize what it is that the Lord is asking them to do specifically. Not necessarily just for Lighthouse. Like Junell said, there's going to be plenty of opportunity there as we grow and expand. We're going to need an army of people who can help. But every single person has a call, and the Lord's waiting for them to ask what that is and to have a willing heart to move forward and do it. And I believe that the kind of listeners that you will have are the kinds who are going to want to question that and want to find out. So I'm so grateful, Anthony, for allowing us to be on the show, and for anyone who took the time to listen through all the hard details and all the miracles. I hope that you know you're capable of creating great miracles on the side of the Lord as well.
I want to share as well. Yesterday, we had a sweet lady who came to the shelter because she just wants to help. And so she decided to bring some food and gifts to the kids at the shelter. And she told before she left, she said, "I promise I'm gonna be back, but I hope that when I come back, let's hope there's not very many kids." And I told her, I don't think that's possible. Yes, that's our hope, of course, but the reality these cases, abuse happens. A lot happens. What do you get under our noses? That's what they call it. And so I do feel like what Julie said, if everyone asks the Lord, what can they do? Find their calling. What does the Lord, what is their part in this work? I know that the Lord will answer their prayers as he has answered ours. And I think that's the message, is ask the Lord, what can you do? And if you feel that, if you get that answer, do it. And I feel like my life has been greatly blessed because of that choice of following and doing. I had a choice not to, but I think I would be very miserable. But now it's not easy. You will be tested. When you follow the Lord, he will test you. He will put you to test. Like I felt like things that I had to face and put myself into test, and I had to keep choosing what I need to do in order to continue this work. It's awesome. It's a great work, and it's as dark as it may be, but you will experience the light, and you would recognize the hand of the Lord in a lot of the things daily.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you both for coming on the show today. I guess as kind of a parting word of my own, don't be afraid to get involved with things that matter. I know you might think it can be a downer, but the world needs as much light as possible. And so I'd like to echo what Julie and Junell said. Find your purpose. Find something you can do. But for all my listeners, something specifically that you can do is follow Lighthouse Sanctuary on Facebook. There's a lot of things we weren't able to talk about because of the constraints of time, but they post regularly about the amazing things that they're doing. Come to the event if you're in or around Utah, and if you're not, there's other ways to donate. You can help with Lighthouse Sanctuary, but the issue and the ways to address what's going on in the world are much bigger than any one person or organization. But this is one way that people can help. So I know you're both too modest to say, donate to our facility. That's how you can help. But I'll say it for you. Anybody who can, please give some of your time. And yes, donate some of your money to what Julie and Junell do. And then go out and find other ways to contribute in your own area. But ladies and gentlemen, Julie and Junell Hernando, founders of Lighthouse Sanctuary in the Philippines. They have an amazing story and an amazing mission. Go check them out. Thanks for listening. And Julie and Junell, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. You do a great job. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll see everybody next time.